going down instead. And now here we are, right back at the top of this trend line of this triangle. And things can always change. The chart can always change, but as of right now, this fits so well. Again, sentiment tends to be dead over here on this side. So, I very much believe that we're due for Litecoin to sort of do the same thing as XRP. And, the sentiment changes extremely quickly when things like this happen. So XRP went from, you're an idiot, it's never going to move, to then I'm posting charts saying, don't expect this thing to go over $20. And they're telling me I'm an idiot. It's going to hundreds of dollars. And so, you know what I mean? Like, it will flip. And once Litecoin starts breaking out, you'll get people who are, calling for, $50,000 Litecoin or some nonsense like that. And they'll tell me I'm an idiot when I tell them it's not realistic. So yeah, I just, it's taking a longer time for it to happen. And ultimately, I do think it's just because there was a little bit more vibrancy in XRP's sort of news cycle and history, and just a lot going on that kept it more in the public eye. Whereas Litecoin, unfortunately, has kind of fallen out of favor in terms of the public eye.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think because it's taken longer, that potentially it moves quicker than XRP? I know XRP was really fast. It was like 3 weeks or 4 weeks basically to its prior all-time high.
Mhm.
But following like historical crypto cycles, it seems like a lot of the late movers that break out when finally like the I don't even want to call it alt season, but technically when, like the Russell 2000 small caps start leading, altcoins start breaking out against Bitcoin, Bitcoin dominance reverses hard. It's the late movers that generally have the quickest, highest percentage gains, like Doge of last cycle, for example, didn't really
Mhm.
start moving until very late December, early January of 2021. Same with Matic, which also was like a 100x move. I think it started mid-January. Like if crypto attention is about to be, much higher with all these altcoin ETFs and a lot of capital rotation from Bitcoin, do you think that will play into potentially Litecoin moving beyond all-time highs faster than XRP, or do you think uh, the move, it doesn't matter that this has taken longer and that Litecoin may get attention during this like total 3 expansion above all-time highs?
Yeah, so I am of the mindset that because it's taking longer, we do get ultimately a faster and bigger move than what we've seen in XRP. The longer sort of compression takes place, and now the compression is extremely tight. The moves are rather small. I want to say even at the April low that we were just talking about, it was like $60, and then like the high was like $140, $150
Mm-hmm.
in 2025. That's a relatively small. It's like under an $80 range or so. Whereas back when we were at this B wave here to the C wave, this is more like I want to say like $350 move.
Yeah.
So the volatility is very low, and volatility is very cyclical. It goes between low volatility and then extremely high volatility. So same thing. We're very much compressed over here. We're primed for something big and violent. I keep using the term shock and awe. I
Mm-hmm.
really do think that like when it moves, people were going to be like, "Holy crap!" Like that was so fast, and I was unprepared for that. Meanwhile, people who have been looking at this for a while or invested in Litecoin for a while, we feel like it's taking forever.
Yeah.
But when it ultimately happens, I do think it's going to catch the market by surprise. I think even us who have been in Litecoin and believe in it are even going to be surprised by what ultimately happens here. And then, I have some Fibonacci extension targets up here for, my like highest take profit targets, and
Mm-hmm.
my highest one here is over $2,000. This one's about $1,200, and then this one's $700. This is about
Mm-hmm.
the absolute lowest. I really honestly think it does much better than this and enters this zone. Maybe we don't get all the way up to the 2K, but I definitely think it's going to reach, in this sort of quadrant here. above $1,500. So I mean, I'm pretty confident that this will do some like a tax at the
Mm-hmm.
very least, if not potentially a 20. Um, and yeah, and when you start seeing those type of figures, I think it will get a lot of more people interested in Litecoin in general.
For sure. Yeah, and I asked you this question kind of before we started the stream, but I wanted to ask you again just for the so the stream can hear it and I can post it. But we were talking about kind of how fast sentiment changes and um, the idea that Litecoin, even though there's going to be this proliferation of Litecoin ETFs and altcoin in general ETFs with this new general rule, um, what we were we were briefly discussing what might make Litecoin stand out and the relationship between the gold and silver markets. You know, silver's at a very interesting point because it's at this basically its all-time high of this super long term, like 40 plus year ascending triangle and might break out. So you may see rotation gold to silver. And you were thinking that traditional investors might look at the Bitcoin to Litecoin relationship similarly. I was wondering if you could expand on that for this stream a little bit.
Yeah, even me myself, I've been a long time gold investor. It's part of what I liked about Bitcoin was that I definitely saw the similarities in the idea of digital gold. And as someone who likes precious metals, I naturally like silver as well. And that was also kind of like my mindset around Litecoin is, hey, this is digital silver. It's the most like, Bitcoin in terms of supply, scarcity, things like that. Right now, we're in a precious metals bull market, at least from gold standards. Gold has done phenomenal in terms of ROI and just staying strong while everything else is. I mean, I can't say everything else is weak because Bitcoin's done well, the stock market's done
Mm-hmm.
well, but certainly like smaller risk assets and things like that. But eventually, when gold starts to slow down, traditionally capital begins to rotate into silver. And I do think when silver starts to really show some life in it, more than it is, it's already broken through some resistance and things like that, and certainly looks like it's ready to head off to new all-time highs. It hasn't yet, so it's still waiting for that big bang type of moment where people start paying a lot more attention to it. Um, and I think when that does happen, I do think that more people's mindset will think, huh, well, Litecoin is the digital silver next to Bitcoin is digital gold. And then, we're also kind of switching longer term from uh, like a secular trend shift from soft assets like stocks and things like that to hard assets like precious metals and other commodities, things with scarce supplies. So I think, a lot of these other altcoins, while they may have some hype behind them that, Litecoin maybe doesn't have right now, I do think the supply aspect ends up being a huge differentiator for Litecoin. I think it gets more of like traditional investors, precious metal investors to start to pay attention. I think it makes Litecoin the next natural fit for, say, Bitcoin investors or Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
treasury companies. They're looking to diversify. And then finally, part of the reason why Bitcoin performs so well is due to the scarce supply. So now, if we see a bunch of Litecoin ETFs start to launch, and the ETFs have to buy up some Litecoin to offer to their, their clients and customers, I do think that scarcity shows up from a fundamental technical standpoint and really helps drive Litecoin much higher. So yeah, I totally think that the narratives around silver will help, and its digital silver sort of status will help it thrive in the future.
For sure. Thanks. That was very well explained. I think it's super interesting because we haven't really seen reflexivity outside of just like the small retail pool of capital that's historically been in crypto. But I think you could really see it on like the institutional side, like you're saying, with people diversifying or funds diversifying out of Bitcoin. If Litecoin starts moving, right, it starts to challenge the one coin only type narrative. And because it's the on-chain supply right now is long-term holders are at all-time highs practically, meaning these coins that have been held by weak hands have been transitioned to stronger hands, and so the ask side liquidity seems relatively small, and the market cap itself is relatively tiny within crypto. So if we start to see like larger money want to diversify out of Bitcoin because the narrative changes with price, it can get really crazy because it doesn't take much in my mind to move an $8 billion asset when XRP at 30 billion moved to 200 without any sort of ETFs or like large institutional type flow. So to me it's like putting a fire hose into a blueberry or something. I've heard that description before, but people are underestimating the reflexive potential and the large scale money that can move into this asset. And I wanted to ask you, I'll share my screen real quick on the top here. I don't know if you can see it, but what's
Yeah.
crazy to me is that search interest for Litecoin is lower than it was in April of 2013,
Wow.
when the crypto market was not even really broadly talked about. Almost nobody knew what cryptocurrency was. That that is so insane because the crypto market itself's grown 100x, but somehow total global interest is lower than it was in 2013, which makes me think like I don't think we've ever seen something like this before. You can check XRPs, it it maintained higher levels of interest.
Mhm.
Um, but for whatever reason, like Litecoin's been not in the conversation at all, and it's at the point where most people should be interested in it right now, right?
Mhm.
Like right at this point of like the apex of this triangle or point of resistance that's rejected price for so long, um, where you should be most interested, but the market's not. It's that that to me has always been the most important thing, like relative sentiment versus the reality of what can potentially happen. What do you make of that? Like even though Litecoin's at $115, which is relatively high compared to the last 3 years, there's nobody really talking about it.
Yeah. So, it's definitely one of those things. We talked about it a little
Mhm.
bit in terms of like the sentiment stuff. And, people just, after so long, it's kind of like, a long forgotten type coin. And it just hasn't done anything in all this time. So it's not getting people to Google. People are Googling, newer, shinier stuff. Not to say that they're not still searching for XRP and things like that, but a lot of that I think came around
Mhm.
after sort of the breakout. And again, people tend to go after price and follow.
Mhm.
Price moves first, and then people sort of follow the trend. It's rare that people are more so ahead of the trend. So now we've talked about how
Mhm.
low volatility everything is, how compressed everything is, and the fact that Litecoin is an ideal candidate for like institutions and things like that. So now institutions, they're not going to be Google searching or
Mhm.
even
Yeah,
posting
true.
on social media to like drum up hype around it. So very well they could be taking positions and accumulating, and they know how to not really move the needle and kind of keep price lower and suppressed. So let's say this capital is getting in, they're gonna be long term holders. Price does still start to break out. I think that, that's part of the reason why it would move so fast. And then two, you know, I think price starts moving, people start Googling, and then so ultimately the price of Litecoin or any asset is the last buy or sell order in the order books, the last bid or ask.
Mhm.
So while capital coming in, especially from substantial entities like institutions and treasury companies, that's great. It's definitely going to add to the market cap. But what's really going to drive price higher, in my opinion, is the people who haven't been paying attention to Litecoin, who suddenly have to, who suddenly don't know how much to bid for the thing, and they start bidding this thing up, and the bid is going higher and higher and higher, and it just gets detached from reality. So again, Even though like it's not actual capital coming in, if the last person to bid Litecoin bids $3,000 and there's a taker for it, price is going to go to $3,000. So
Yeah.
things can get absolutely detached from reality quickly. I think the lack of interest switching suddenly to wow, there's a ton of interest and wow, this thing is moving is a perfect catalyst for all that, and really, again, helps sort of match sort of the technical setup in terms of that triangle up thrust I talked about at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
All these things, again, lack of volatility, depression, the poor sentiment, the lack of interest, all of that will tie into the sudden switch of high volatility, the expansion, all those things. And yeah, so I think it's okay. I think it's probably somewhat normal for this type of pattern. It is a very, very long, drawn out sideways triangle. Those things get boring. So like sharper corrections in Elliott-wave, those it's the how extreme the price drop is what shakes people out.
Mm-hmm.
In these sort of sideways position patterns, it's really the length of time and the
Mm-hmm.
frustration that shakes people out. So with like people sufficiently shaken out, other than the long, like you said, all these long term coin holders who are mostly behind Litecoin and everything, and then new entities coming in, and we get that breakout, and people FOMO. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty amazing. So yeah, I think that's par for the course. A little unusual though, with just again with how fundamentally strong Litecoin is. It's bizarre to me that there is such little search or social interest around it.
Yeah, like going into this cycle in late or mid to late 2022, I I saw this ordinal stuff start to be talked about and pumped by like bigger influencers, and I thought to myself, okay, maybe this is the high beta play this cycle, that like meme coins basically on Bitcoin would do really well, and that it would uh, basically force migration to Litecoin, and it didn't play out as extremely as I thought it was, but Litecoin grew in total users more than it's ever grown, and I thought that would have been a bigger story, right? It literally uh, increased in daily users, more a total of like 100,000 a day, which it basically doubled in that short time period, and it's maintained those levels, which is 20x higher than Bitcoin Cash, 20x higher than Dogecoin. But the media didn't report on it at all. So it's like leading across all these merchant processors. The path
Mhm.
for growth is very easy because if you're expecting Bitcoin demand like fundamentally on the monetary side to increase, like if you're a believer in monetization of Bitcoin long term, you think it's the best money. Well, Litecoin has way more growth potential because it'll just steal more and more of these higher value BTC users. And so I was thinking search interest would be high, but it actually went the opposite way. That wasn't a story at all. It probably will become a story and a narrative when price breaks out, but that
Mhm.
was most confusing to me. I have a question for you on like short-term timeframes and like expectation for you currently. I know these are really hard uh, to predict, but
Mhm.
we're nearing up against this resistance, against that upper trend line of that long-term triangle. Do you think it's likely to break out here in the next month or so, with all these ETFs about to be launched, or do you think we get one more pullback before the move?
I am of the mindset, and it is really tough to call these things. And I have actually said prior, oh, I think Litecoin's ready to break out, and it didn't. So like I don't want
Yeah.
to be boy who cried wolf here, but I mean it looks really good. So I've got this particular downtrend line drawn on the monthly. And you can see, even this candle's brushing right up against it. Last month we actually poked through, but it was swatted down. This I actually view as a pretty good thing, this candle, even though it's a shooting star candle. It wicked into resistance and didn't close above it. But the fact we didn't reverse down like
Mhm.
hard tells me that this was just a bit of a false breakout. It got sold down, and there's a high chance that we're getting this breakout this month. I know, a couple of the Litecoin ETFs were due for approval sometime in October. My mindset is always the fact that, if it is going to be approved, which I actually do think it does, insiders are going to start to run this higher prior to the actual approval date. We won't see the approval and then boom, it goes. It's going to go like a week before or 2 weeks before. So, again, downtrend line drawn. We can now drop down to some of these lower time frames, and we can see we did get it. We made a few attempts to get above it here, and we are just hanging around at the top of this thing right here. We got above it, rejected back down, but now we're trying again and hanging out. And then I'm looking a lot at like momentum and stuff, so that's why I put this particular indicator on. And you can see on this monthly, we're strengthening bullish momentum. Where this is the zero line, right? That sort of like right here, and we're above the zero line here, above the zero line here. This is where rallies happen, so that's looking good on the higher time frame. So as we work our way back, we're seeing a similar setups in terms of we're above this zero line now. This, even though they don't all lead to rallies like this thing up here. Being above the zero line is absolutely an important factor. And then, I happen to notice, if you draw the same sort of downtrend line here, all we need is for this to sort of diverge up and break through this. And this should be, the start of our monster move. And if this is happening right around where, we're up at the top of this resistance line, I feel even more strong that we're close. And then triangles tend to break out. This is a little bit late. It's supposed to be around 2/3 to the apex. So that's another reason why I kind of thought this was going to be the breakout. But, again, this was our D wave, E wave, and now we're working on what I would consider a series of 1-2. So it's a 1-2, 1-2 setup. And, this next move should be the 3. And that's always the longest and strongest of any sort of move. So this would have been your 1, another 1, 1-2 type thing, and then boom, here's your 3, and this is the 5. So you can see this is a really large move. I think we're just about beginning that, and I'm going to continue to work down these time frames. So same sort of thing. You go to the 3-day, and although we're sort of teetering down, if you look up here, we're trying to hold above this line. I'll even jump down to the daily. On the daily, we closed above it yesterday, and now we're kind of heading back down. But over here, we're just about above this zero line. We had a green tick yesterday for strengthening bullish momentum. We're heading back down now, so this is going to be a little bit of a decisive moment. If Litecoin can close strong today and give this another green tick, and this starts to kind of head upward, I would imagine that our breakout is coming as soon as within the next week or two. It may it may need to kind of hang and hold above this a little bit more. But, the more times sort of like a downtrend resistance line is tested. In fact, now that I drag this down on the daily, because I want it to really kind of touch here, we could be retesting this right now. And although these several retests here were all lost and everything, hopefully this one holds and we start to move up. But, I would see taking out this 133 high, that should be a sign that we're ready to start to really cook upwards. There's a couple other spots of resistance that are pretty important to me. I want to say the super trend over here kind of highlights it well. So yeah, so it's $134. In my opinion, when we break this, the rally is going to start and start really cooking. So, about above $135 is really what I'm looking at. And then even right here, we have resistance with the Ichimoku cloud. But once it enters here, just like I don't have a good example here, but once it gets into the Ichimoku cloud, it should kind of very quickly move up to say $220. I wouldn't be surprised if it makes it right out. So, these in the short term, I see the path to this happening very, very soon. In fact, within the next, I really want to say before October, the end of October, I think we do see some sort of breakout in Litecoin. And, I don't want to jump too far ahead or anything, but we are looking at this is the total three chart. So while I'm not necessarily of the mindset we see a full on altcoin season,
Mm-hmm.
we have some really good signals here. Like the ADX is rising above 20. That's telling us a trend is going. We want to see it do something like this over here. And if the total crypto market starts to trend like this, and then Litecoin is at this point of breakout and everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's time. And then, I think it was actually before the stream started when we were just chatting, you mentioned the Russell 2000 small cap stock index
Mm-hmm.
and how that, is typically a sign that altcoins are going to do well and things like that. And that just made a new all-time high yesterday. So,
Yep.
I think we're, all the signs are truly there. It's just, what is the actual, like, we just need this spark, I guess, to set off this
Yep.
bomb and it's going to go.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I've been feeling. Unfortunately, yeah, like you, I was bullish at the highs when it got rejected because I thought it was going to break out as well. But that doesn't mean I'm less confident or you're less confident that it's not coming. It should expand. I wanted to ask you because I've noticed like the fifth waves, if you're counting on the higher time frames for Litecoin, like whether it's for 2013, 2014 cycle or the 2017 cycle, those seem to be like the most vertical or fastest.
Hmm.
So if you're looking at the total high time frame move from the bottom, if this is wave 5, do you think that uh, says anything about the rate of expected rise here? I've always thought because, you know, wave fives for Litecoin usually happen when it was the end stage of a mania for Bitcoin and Bitcoin fees rallied, Litecoin gained users, that it potentially impacted price. But it always seemed to me like um, these wave fives were the steepest. Um, but I don't know if that has any implication on your like technical analysis for Litecoin. Maybe it's not. I mean, in 2013, the third wave was strong, but had you
Yeah.
ever
So,
looked at that?
um, in most markets, third wave is longest and strongest, but in commodities, the fifth wave can be the longest and strongest and tends to be extended. So I truly think it is Litecoin's scarcity in commodity like design that later in sort of the overall wave up, the larger wave up, the fifth wave becomes even more heated because again, there's not as much supply to go around. The order books are thinner, and you still got that FOMO. A lot of people ended up missing, say this, the third wave move here. So they buy the dip, they get in here, but they don't know when to get out. It gets bid up.
Mm-hmm.
And then these are the smaller degree wave fives, like you
Mm-hmm.
said. If this is a larger degree wave five that's coming, and we see the same sort of behavior, it really does speak to why it ultimately could be so strong. And these third waves have been strong too. So if we're heading into a third wave now, we should get something decent. Then we'll cool off again, and then probably one more really strong wave like this, for a wave five of five.
Mm-hmm.
So again, really kind of speaks to the overall behavior of Litecoin and why it feels so down in the dumps and like people want to give up on it and things like that. It all just kind of ties into a really beautiful technical setup.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like expectations for timing on how long this higher time frame fifth wave likely takes? Do you expect it to be shorter, like the previous wave fives, or since it's a higher time frame wave five, it takes a little bit longer? What's your expectation for like the total crypto market finishing off this potential mania phase if we do get it, or just Litecoin specifically? How long would you? I know time is super hard, but what is your kind of general idea here?
Yeah, so I think when we do get the breakout, we'll move extremely fast. And so maybe by say December, we've already hit some sort of new all-time high in Litecoin. I think, towards the end of the year into Q1, we'll probably correct a little bit and go into that smaller wave four of five. and then maybe that lasts up to a full quarter. So I would assume ultimately Litecoin is topped by mid 2026, and that looks pretty accurate to me in terms of what the rest of the market's doing. I think a lot of people are expecting Bitcoin to peak, say December, that area, and that's very well possible. It tends to look like things are just kind of taking a lot longer for Bitcoin, especially, and then the total crypto market index also looks like same sort of thing. It looks like it's ready to move pretty hard and fast soon, and then there'll be some profit taking and cooling down. Sort of fits that same sort of time frame of topping, say maybe mid 2026.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's so hard with time, but that makes sense to me. Um, do you watch for like how will you be trading this? I know you said you're looking at these extension targets, so you have like
Mhm.
three take profit targets. Is it mainly based on price, or do you also have other indicators to watch, like on the lower time frames as this starts to break out to reassess um, but potential take profit targets, or if it
Yeah,
takes too long? What will you look at after as this rally starts, if it does?
that's a great question. And I also wanted to show something off before I forget it that I wanted to show before. But so now I called out this 1.618 Fibonacci extension over $2,000. Now we are dealing with a triangle, so technically you can apply the measure rule to it, where you would take the width of the triangle and then apply this measurement to the breakout. And if we're breaking out around here, I mean, this takes me right around this Fibonacci target, naturally. So I really do think, we have the potential to get as high as almost $2,000, if not, a little bit beyond it. And the measure rule appears to, back up that claim as well. So in terms of my take profit, definitely, price levels do matter to me. I'll probably start to scale out, when we get close to around $1,000. I'll start to, maybe take 20% of my LTC and sell that, and then do that in like 10 and 20% increments as we move higher. I'm also going to be looking at things. So I have the ADX up right now, and I might as well just show it off. But it shows, again, a new trend blossoming, similar to what we have over here, similar to what we have over here. So that's all good. And then in terms of actual, how do we know that we've topped? Things like the RSI are going to be really important on a variety of time frames. So I'll pull that up, and we want to see something where we've moved, really high above 70. 70 is the oversold. I'm sorry, yeah, overbought
Hmm.
level, and although it does signal like temporary tops and things like that, as you can see here. Typically, when you get this extended move here above 70 and it moves, this is the strongest buying pressure that you can get. So this one went all the way up to 97 on the RSI. Maybe we don't get that high, but I would like to see it in the 80s, maybe even then lower 90s before I would start thinking top. And
Hmm.
then another thing is too is you tend to get one of these spikes, and then the other one over here is lower. So
Hmm.
even though price did move up here, we got a divergence, a bearish divergence of the RSI, and this is very common for the RSI to behave like that. I probably want to see, once this move starts and looks like it's coming up, I probably, get out completely and try to get, as much profit as I can out of that. On higher time frames too, the RSI is pretty important. You can see, past tops and things like that are typically, above 70 on the monthly. We're nowhere even near 70 on the monthly. We're 57. Maybe even this, good thing to point out here is we still have this downtrend line to kind of contend with,
Hmm.
and we're close to it. So when this starts to go, I would assume we get above 70 rather quickly, and then you can see what things look like when it's above 70. You get
Yeah.
giant candles like this and moves like this. So we just got to get here, and then the promised land is up here. So that's one thing I'd be looking for. Let's see. There's definitely a bunch of other things like closing back into the Bollinger Bands tends to end a move. So, even here, closing back into it.
Mhm.
So as this sort of goes up, the Bollinger Bands will expand, the lower band will pop out down here. And, once we start to close back into the Bollinger Bands, I would be concerned. Another thing is you can actually see you have to scroll all the way down, but when the lower Bollinger Band actually starts to curl back up, it tends to be, it
I
tells
see.
us
Yeah.
we've topped, the trend is over. So, something else to consider there. So I definitely have a bunch of things. None of them are going to be foolproof or anything like that.
Mhm.
You're always going to kind of, so like even though I've had these bearish divergences here, there's always a possibility we don't get that at all over here or something like that. Like this one really didn't have a bearish divergence, even though this was a lower high and then a lower high, so it's not a divergence. Like I can't bank on those things.
Mhm.
It's certainly something I'm watching and considering. Other things is sometimes the TD9s will start to fire right before the top. Maybe
Mhm.
we get something like that again. Didn't do anything over here, so it's not a guarantee. I have a tool called the Raging Bull. It tends to turn off, and that's a sign that whatever was going on is over now. So I'll watch for that to light back up. I'm going to see that sort of go, and when that shuts off, that's another sign. Parabolic SAR. When you get a real good rally like this, you can use this as a trailing stop loss. Basically, use your stop loss, move it up, and then price will come back down and got tagged right actually on this candle right here, and that closed the trade for you. So a lot of things you can do, other people can do and watch. I would pay most attention to the weekly and monthly time frames for trying to figure out if we've topped. The daily isn't going to tell you much, even though the actual top will happen on the daily. Obviously,
Mhm.
it will be really hard to read in that sense. And then, of course, sentiment too, and what everything else is
Yeah.
going on in the market. Once people start telling you, you idiot, Litecoin's going to $40,000, then you
Mhm.
can say, okay, sentiment's out of control now. Maybe I need to start paying attention. Or when people start showing off the APs they bought,
Mhm.
and all the Lambos and things like that, and or pictures of NFTs of rocks start
Mhm.
selling again. So just watch for all those sort of signs and signals, and then and if you can combine some of that with what the technicals I just showed, you could be in a good position to get out with most of your gains.
For sure. That's super helpful. Thanks for showing that. On the so RSI divergence was your main thing. I was just trying to run through in my head to summarize so I can remember for people that might ask questions later. But I can rewind the chart. You're one of the technical analysts that actually uses a lot of indicators well, and it seems like you're looking for confluence amongst multiple to get kind of the highest probability of success. And that's what I always try to do too. And I primarily relied on sentiment and then on-chain indicators. I know in
Mm-hmm.
2021 it was really easy to see the top. In hindsight, I actually posted about it, but there was a massive amount of coins, Litecoin, that were moved to exchanges, a dramatic increase from any time before, right on the top date, the exact day of the top. I know a lot of the Litecoin community was promoting it at the time as well. Like, look how much volume Litecoin is doing compared to Bitcoin, but
Mm-hmm.
it was really, a huge amount of sell pressure from miners mainly that had been holding it. So that it's harder to see on Litecoin. Those signals have been lost because of the MWeb stuff. You can't tell anymore how much money is
Mm-hmm.
really moving on Litecoin chain. So we'll have to rely more on technical indicators and sentiment. But I'm glad you gave us some things to look at. And maybe when we get higher and when this is breaking out, I don't know, it might be super crazy, but I wanted to have people like yourself um, that have been actually tracking and following Litecoin and are very well versed in its technical structure to potentially try to help out our community here that's been here for so long. If you're available at any point
Yeah.
during the mania. Because I know there's not many Litecoin communities out there. It's a very small speculative community relative to like Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to try to do my best to help everyone out here that's been here for so long.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be happy to. And that's sort of my feeling around the Litecoin community as well. I've been in crypto for a long time. Yeah, I was mostly a Bitcoin guy publicly and everything like that, but always have loved my Litecoin. And there's no community that really honestly like treats me better. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm actually a part of, like, I hold other coins. I don't feel like I'm a part of those communities whatsoever, but I actually do feel like I'm part of the Litecoin community. I even interact with the Litecoin account itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want the Litecoin community and family to do well. It's like, and I know it's hard because we're all believers. So, we want to hold some indefinitely as well. But we do know that markets cycle, and it's going to go up and get overvalued, and we'll have to sell some to take some profit, and deal with whatever how it comes after that. So I would love for the opportunity to come back and help people sort of gauge when to get out. As you've seen, so a lot of influencers go on and they're like, they just basically pick like a nice rounded number. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I know I've said 2000, but I'm saying 2000 because there's the 1.618 Fibonacci extension there, or
Mm-hmm.
because the measure rule adds up and actually targets there. I only have ever chosen a target for something based on some sort of math and that's steeped in reality. So I'm very adamant, even in the XRP community, that hey, this thing ain't going to $589. It's not going to $100. So like, get that shit out of your head. And I'm happy to try to keep people kind of steeped in reality. I know it's hard again when you're a big believer. Of course, you're gonna be like, well, what if? And it has the potential to, and it does. It's incredibly scarce, based on even the Bitcoin ratio and where it used to be. I don't see why Litecoin. I mean, even when I think about it like this, it's Litecoin is what 84 million. Is that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
84
yeah.
million. So basically, in my opinion, just so if they were launched fairly at the same exact time, had the same exact growth trajectory and investor base and everything like that, realistically, Litecoin should be like 20 something $22,000 per coin. It should
Yeah.
be 1/4 of what Bitcoin is. So I mean, it's not absolutely without the realm, outside the realm of possibility that it could do that. But let's be real, like that's very unrealistic. It didn't launch the same way. There's been such different like policy changes around Bitcoin and not so
Mm-hmm.
much everything else, which have enabled it to go even higher and do better. So
Oh no, it cut out for a sec.
and yeah, it's important to kind of keep our expectations more in reality, because let's be real, making some money off this and getting something out of all this loyalty and determination and this long wait. That's what I want for everybody. I don't want people to come up and empty-handed, or round trip this cycle and end up back to where we are. I don't think that's the case. I think we'll always be, so once this area gets broken out from, it will be left behind forever. But
Mm-hmm.
still, it's better to make a good decision. Um, you know, hold a small portion, hold a small percentage, a small bag forever, or even if you think that's why earlier in the conversation I mentioned I'll scale out. I'll do 20% here. I'll do 10% here. I'll do another 20% here. And part of my reason for doing that is because even though I have targets in mind, I don't know if they get hit. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if price exceeds it. So if I have a small bag, after we've got to 2 grand and we go to 5 grand, I still got a little bit to sell. So,
Yeah.
if I've sold 80% and I didn't hit 20 grand and I end up holding 20% of my bag, that's okay too, because I sold most of it and made a great profit. So just have some sort of strategy in mind.
Mm-hmm.
The more sort of room you give yourself to take profit and things like that, like again, scaling in and out. I highly recommend that, because then, yeah, you maybe feel like you sold a little low 1 or 2 times or something like that if it goes higher. But ultimately, it's selling low at lower than you'd like, or lower than whatever the high peak is always better than holding through another bear market. And if this bear market took us, 8 years to get to another breakout, I don't want to hold during the next one. You know what I mean? Like I want to take my money. Even again, if I have a small bag left over, wonderful. But I want to get out with as much money as I possibly can.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's helpful. Super helpful. And as the price starts going up, I'm sure like the incentive to hold will be higher. It's hard. It's always really hard in a mania to not get sucked in. So what I always remind myself is we're still far off from real crypto monetization. We're still kind of in like this casino phase. And if price is going to rise entirely based on speculation, it is going to fall again, and it's impossible to know
Mhm.
how high. So yeah, I think all of your words of advice there are going to be important, and more important as like it's like sometimes hard even for us if price does explode here to like maintain control of your emotions and make the same decisions you set out to make when you originally planned them. So I'll be live streaming and hopefully can maintain composure, and then yeah, if you're down to come back in a few months or whenever this starts to get crazy, that'd be super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, appreciate it. I think that's a good place. I know that was pretty short, but I think you covered from the higher time frames to the lower time frames and what we can expect. I think that was very comprehensive. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or do you think you covered most of the
Um,
things?
Yeah, I think I went over mostly everything. Quickly glance at sort of my indicators and stuff. I think in a couple of things I just wanted to point out to kind of give people a little bit more confidence and things like that is,
Mhm.
we did get this weekly golden cross here. This one was like, you can see is a little bit late, but still, these are more confirmatory. So, moving averages, especially when combined like this, they're a trend following system. So, it's going to tell you after the trend is sort of already started and then follow it. So, technically, if you look at it from that perspective, this trend has just begun. And now
Mhm.
this should sort of cook up and start to follow it. And now I also brought up something like the ADX earlier, like that. Now, this is a tool that helps confirm a trend is or isn't active. So, we're just above 20 now, and what this should be telling us. So if you get a golden cross and you're below this 20, it's not something you should really trust.
Mhm.
We're still in a trendless consolidation. But this is telling us we probably can trust this one. And, if it's like this, we're going to get an absolutely massive move. And, again, you can start to draw like downtrend lines on a lot of these things.
Oh
And,
wow.
we
Yeah.
just have to kind of get a higher high here. And, once we got this higher high on this one over here, you could tell things really started to move. So these golden crosses are appearing on everything below the weekly. We just got one on the 3 day. 3 day though was a little choppy. You can see, look how many false signals we got here. Really wasn't a great signal. But another really strong one is close, and it's the 2 week. We don't quite have the trend here just yet, but this should be a good start. This is a very late laggy one, but this is going to be the first one of these golden crosses ever. I truly, truly tend to think that it leads to something really good. We're out of the Ichimoku cloud on some of these time frames, and you can see here once you're out, it kind of took off out, much higher. We came back down, retested it, it held. You can see it. I find this also fascinating, to be honest, though. So, like the Ichimoku, this is projected 20 periods into the future.
Mhm.
So, this area over here where price held was on the chart back when we were over here. And it's like, how did it know that
Wow.
this is where we were going to come down and test? It's just so fascinating to me. So, just so many things are kind of going well for it. My last sort of technical I'm going to show here is the 2 month. We'll get the ADX out of here, and it's this Bollinger Band. And now this is the tightest this time frames Bollinger Bands have ever been. This is
Mhm.
showing us this low volatility and compression state. We, above the Bollinger Band basis line here tends to be bullish. Below it tends to be bearish. We not only made it above, but we retested it and held. We're at this tightness. All we need is a strong close above this. It generates a buy signal like this, and then it should start to walk the bands up pretty sharply. And coming from this record tightness, the move, it's kind of, again, telling us that this move is going to be really big and strong and violent.
Mm-hmm.
So, huge technical signal here. And then this little, this black candle, doji, and then white up candle. This is a morning star pattern, and it tends to be considered a bullish reversal pattern. And although, there's not a huge trend here to reverse, we're already kind of in more of an uptrend. It's still a great signal to happen right over here. Let's see if there's any others on the chart or anything like this. This is kind of like that sort of thing. And, clearly it started a new uptrend. And so like these patterns are pretty legit. And actually that just reminded me, there's a whole bunch of them on the quarterly, which, oops, that's the 6 month. I'm just going to pop this one back on the 3 month. And I can show you is not only there is one here, same pattern, two, and now three of these same Japanese candlestick patterns. And this one's closing above this sort of like shorter term resistance line that's kind of kept us at bay. So this should be left behind after this. I think, there's only 11 days. This is another reason why I think the move is technically starting already. And even up to the next 2 weeks could be very, very bullish, because the quarterly candle, I think, is going to close higher, maybe not all the way up here towards former all-time highs, but at least say $150. I think it's going to maybe find some resistance here. But so it's leaving this level. And then that tells me if we're above this and we get all these bullish patterns here, this next quarter, Q4 and Q1 2026 should be really, really strong. And that's also where I sort of got my top timing from is so all this as well. So yeah, I think it's looking good, man.
Awesome. Thank you. Actually, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you. I saw you posted on X. It was the like LTC. We didn't talk about any of the pair charts, so if you have maybe a few more
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Um, I I thought it was interesting that one on the super long time frames, like the 12 month, if you use like Vantage and look at the total price history of Litecoin versus Bitcoin, it was on a 9 yearly TD.
Oh wow.
Um,
I didn't I didn't realize Vantage had the. That's great to know. Let me pop that up.
yeah, if
Find it.
you have to do like LTC USD for Vantage and then slash BLX or something to get the full.
Oh, gotcha.
Um,
Oh
oh,
yeah, you're
if
right.
wait, I think that's from Coinbase still.
Oh,
So if
that's.
you click on
Oh,
the, you can change it for, yeah.
let me
Now
see.
click on
Okay.
LTC USD on the top so you can switch it to Vantage. Yeah, if you scroll down.
There we go. You just taught me something. To be honest, I didn't know you could do that on the
Yeah.
first one. That's cool. And then yeah, I don't have the TD9 on this one, but I definitely I've seen it on one of my charts.
Mhm.
So I know it's there. And then I also got this is a doji. It shows a pause for indecision. It's happening right at the bottom of this. This definitely looks like something that could turn around in terms of the pair. We can, if this ends up closing and engulfing this, that would be fantastic. But if not, 2026 would probably be more of the reversal on the
Mhm.
pair. And then, you could totally make a case for a large white up candle here. Maybe, I went a little too high. It doesn't need to go up here, but, maybe it gets to up here or something like that.
And then on the
But I did see the TD9 on the 3 month,
mhm.
and we are working on this. This I do think ends as a bullish engulfing candle. So we just need this white to kind of close above the black, and this will be a bullish engulfing. This nine failed here. They do. It's not a big deal. I don't think this one fails. I think that we have completed. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves down. So I definitely think we've completed a correction. So my expectation is that we do close above this, get this bullish engulfing. We get a bullish engulfing on a TD9. And I'm not super familiar with what the technicals look like on this one, but I would almost guarantee, yeah, like, this, if we draw a downtrend line, um, you know, it wouldn't take much
Mhm.
to break out of this and start to head up. And then, we get a new uptrend. So to me, even the Litecoin versus Bitcoin pair looks ripe and ready to go, and is going to produce a reversal, and this is a great sign that this is all going to happen.
Awesome. Yeah, it's crazy how long its downtrend has been. It's been in this channel for like 3, 4 years. Or actually
Yeah,
no, since 2019.
yeah,
But that would be a huge breakout if we can do it. Um, well, sweet. Yeah, it does look primed. I mean, all the signals on the lower and higher time frames looked aligned. We just need this spark catalyst. And if, like what you said, we get to 150 at the close of this month, yeah, it should set us up for a super strong Q4. Sweet. Tony, are you still running the um service for people if they want to get access to like sort of your more in-depth technical analysis? Are you still offering that?
yeah. Thanks for asking. I am doing two things at the moment. I still have my premium newsletter that comes out 3 times a month. There's no exact schedule or anything like that. It's really based on like when something significant is happening in the market, but it's guaranteed three newsletters per month. They're super in depth. Each one has at least say 30 charts. There tends to be a theme that ties it all together. Like the last one was all done on golden crosses. Before that, it was on Ethereum, and then before that, I did an entire issue on Litecoins called "Let There Be Litecoin." So
Awesome.
that's on Substack. It's coinchartist.substack.com. And then I'm also doing mentorship on the Slice app, it's called. And there's a link in my bio for that for anybody listening. And through that service, I give more trade setups. I try to do more educational stuff where I'm actually teaching people what technical indicators do, how to use them. And then I'm using like real-time examples where I'm showing how a golden cross is more effective when the ADX is above 20, something I kind of showed off during this.
Mm-hmm.
So I got stuff on teaching people how to use the Bollinger Bands correctly as a trading system. All kinds of things, and I have a lot more planned in terms of that one. So, very different services. They both offer charts and a little bit more in-depth analysis from me. One's a heck of a lot more hands-on and designed to teach you, and then the other one is more like guidance. Like here's what kind of to expect from the market over the next several weeks, and here's what's happened in the past couple of weeks, type of thing. So, decent variety between the two services. And then anybody who signs up to Slice, because it's a little bit more expensive, I'm going to give them the newsletter for 90 days for free. So, you get a
Oh,
little sample
awesome.
of it. Yeah.
So on the Slice app, they can find you, and then I posted your link, coinchartist.substack.com,
Thank you.
in the chat. And I think it is useful. Like if you want up-to-date, real-time information, like when this starts getting heated, we might have Tony on for one point, but it probably would be worth it if we are going to start seeing this low volatility expand into high volatility. It can make a significant difference in your overall like returns for this cycle if you have someone experienced guiding you. So I think a lot of these paid groups probably just they're trying to sell a service to make money for themselves without offering much value, but Tony's put in the work for going through official like technical analysis school and then has a history of being catching a lot of these major moves. So I might actually join it. So I appreciate it, Tony. Thanks so much. Maybe we can just stay in contact. I'm sure I'll see your charts posted on X and then schedule another one. And I'm sure if we do get this high time frame breakout, like we'll have much higher viewership when search interest isn't below 2013 levels.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I expect, the whole market to come alive and retail to fully start paying attention again, all the media outlets to light up. So, yeah, man, we'll definitely stay in touch. More than happy to come back on. And yeah, I'd love to interact with everyone from the Litecoin community. Thank you to anybody who tuned in to listen to me.
Yeah, for sure. I'll have this posted later today. So if they didn't catch the live, they can catch the recording. I think this was really good. Appreciate it. Like very informative. I think it was concise, clear, and yeah, great to have you back. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, Tony. Well, good luck with whatever you're doing today. Um, and we'll see what happens.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. Had a good time.
All right. Thanks, Tony. See you later. All right, guys. That was cool. Tony, I like Tony because he's a real guy. He's one of the few real ones, and he doesn't care about hype or what's popular. Obviously, he'll catch popular trends with technical analysis, but he has his own objective opinion. It's not influenced really by the outside world. And he, similar to myself, just learned everything through trial and error and like finding what works best for him. And I think those are the people that, even if they don't have the most followers, are the ones you should listen to because uh, they spent the time, they had the discipline to go figure something out, and they've succeeded. Tony is awesome. All right, thanks NVK. Let me let me turn on this music again. I was recording. It might have skipped the very beginning. I don't know, something messed up with the recording. It like stopped and then I realized it and I started it again. But it at least has everything, maybe minus the first couple minutes. Thanks for coming. I know it's 11 a.m. on a Friday, so a lot of people are working. Yeah, we'll see if we can get this move started here in the next couple weeks. I think it's I didn't ask Tony, but like on the lower time frames, it does kind of look like a completed running flat correction. I don't know how he's counting the lower time frames. But from the high here, it looks like an ABC down, ABC up, and then potentially 5 waves down. And we're just chopping sideways, waiting for broader strength in the market here. I also didn't ask him, and I wanted to stick mainly to his technical analysis, and I think I brought this up before. But every single coin that had the largest percentage gains for the whole cycle, or the vast majority of coins that did, broke out later in the cycle, right when some of these other signals, like Russell 2000 broke out slightly early, late 2020. After Bitcoin, after some of these other leading altcoins that kind of followed Bitcoin, like XRP and Litecoin last cycle led, Doge. But it was mainly the very late movers, late runners that had the most attention when everyone started focusing on the crypto markets. It really led to outperformance. So it was Doge here, XRP in 2017, even Matic didn't start moving until it was like mid-January. It didn't break this high until actually late January, early February. But from this high, it moved like nearly 100x, and nobody was really paying attention to it. Um, so yeah, I think honestly, it's the craziest setup. We've been watching it a long time, that's why you see it, but sentiment super low. Nobody's paying attention to it as it's barely corrected off the recent high here with an ETF, multiple ETFs opening up much larger pools of capital to buy cryptocurrencies with a unique narrative within the crowded altcoin space of digital silver or the second Bitcoin chain, with a long history with strong fundamentals, which maybe these types of investors will actually look at. Nobody else seems to do that, but if you actually understand the way these network will networks will grow. Like I don't want to explain it again. I've done it a million times. The Litecoin has the lowest risk, especially at this price point. I've done it a million times. Oops. What should we do, friends? I think I'm gonna come back later, like at the normal time, around 9. I really wanted to do this Wall Street walk. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it yesterday, but it's a nice day today. So I'll see what I have to do and then hopefully go there and come back for the chart stream later. But that's the plan. I'll be back around 9 p.m. Eastern. What's up, Ceiling Fan? If you want to rewind the stream, we just had Tony the Bull give us his perspective on the charts. Just send it. What should we play? I'm gonna transition the stream to another playlist here. Which one should we go with? Yeah, for sure, Peter. Thanks for coming. We're gonna try to make this community win. At least be informed on the fundamental side. That's my strength. The macro side, and then the charts will have. I think my technical analysis skills are fine, but I haven't spent as much time in the trading side as I have the fundamental and macro side. Yeah, he covered his take profit levels. He covered his expectations of time, lower time frame expectations for breakout, kind of the indicators that he's watching for both for the breakout and momentum, plus what he'll look for signs of us nearing the top. It's always hard, right? It's impossible pretty much to get the exact top. But you can increase your probability of success with confluence amongst multiple technical indicators, sentiment analysis, the macro side of things. If you have a complete set of tools, your odds of success multiply dramatically. Yeah, guys, I didn't see any recommendations for what I should play, so I'm just gonna pick something. And I'll be back later on. Let's play the Sailor album, the 21 Million Lies. This, I know, is a little bit offensive to some. Or should we keep it Litecoin focused? Let's play the Litecoin coffee shop. Alright guys, you guys can hang out here, rewind the stream to watch Tony's analysis, and I'll as soon as I end this and transition, I'll stop the recording and upload it. But have a great day, have a great Friday, and I'll see you guys all later tonight.